Okay, so the thesis of my book, Growth Makes You Happy, is that growth indeed is necessary to make societies advance. I should try to show that societies which have no growth are less happy societies, and I decide that if you want to make things possible, be it more childcare, better roads, more nature parks, or whatever kind of choice you want to make a society, you can only finance it if you have economic growth. So that's the first conclusion. You need growth as a society to be able to achieve things. The second conclusion is, where can we get this economic growth? And then my main conclusion is that the government cannot decree economic growth. You cannot decide economic growth. Economic growth basically comes about, starts existing whenever there is competition, because that's where the best ideas will come from. And for competition to be able to happen, you need to have free markets. So basically the thesis is you have free markets, competition, and then you get economic growth. It's not the government which can decree economic growth. This does not mean that I think that the government is something we don't need. I think we do need a government. The government needs to reassure property rights. There needs to be an independent judiciary to agree on the decision of conflicts in contracts between parties. And the government also needs to make sure that they do investment in public investment as well as in education. I think if that role is assumed by the government, education, guaranteeing free markets and enforcing contracts, then I think free markets and competition are the best way of achieving economic growth and making societies happier places. So what I think should be changed if you change from a very regulated system to a free market, I think the most important change you need to be seeing is that the consumer becomes the center of all decisions. You need to be able to convince the consumer, to seduce the consumer. It's not outer regulations you need to comply with. Regulations are there, but they're not the most important one. On a free market, every free agent, be it a consumer or a household or a company, tries to make sure that they can sell their services to somebody else. Not because they know somebody or the government prefers them, but because they have the best service. That's what I think is the main difference between a free market and an unfree market. And I think in a free market, free people, free societies can make their choices. And I think that's what the most important thing is in a free market. Defend yourself against competitors, trying to lock your competitors out of the market. That's not a free market. In a free market, change is the only thing you're going to be certain of. Constant change, constant innovation, constant competition. And that's a very, very different mindset than being, for example, a monopolist who is protected against competition, protected against change. And that's what I think is what a free market should be about. There's competition, but it's not an enemy-like competition. It's a competition to achieve the best product and the best service. And that's what a free market is about. Well, if unfree markets could be characterized by, for example, monopolies, cartels, a lot of government intervention, government subsidies, which change the entire setup of a market. If you get subsidized by the government, all the incentives of a company change. And if that goes away, basically, companies, products, services are judged on their own true merits. You're successful because you have a good product or a good service, not because the government tells that you should be the one that has to be chosen, or because you have a monopoly that's protected. In a really, really free market, basically, the quality of your service, of your product, determines your success. And that's, for me, the ultimate guide to what a free market should be. The first tip I would give to CEOs is be a leader, not a manager. Don't try to micromanage everything, but set clear principles, guidelines, and strategic guidelines for the medium term that people can cling to, and make sure that whatever you do in the company is in accordance with this long-term guidelines. Secondly, a second tip I would give is basically lead from below as well as lead from above. You need, at time to time, a manager needs to micromanage small stuff, small conflicts on the work floor. He needs to do that. And in other occasions, he needs to have strategic ideas about what happens to the company, the market, the economy, etc. But you have to be a combination of both. A manager or a CEO who only sets long-term guidelines and doesn't do anything in itself is more of an armchair strategist. Somebody who is only micromanaging fails to see the bigger picture. I think that is basically the second challenge. Be able to zoom in, but also be able to zoom out. And as a third example, I would like to say, everything that you read as a CEO, as a manager, as a business person, everything you read, try to think how it relates to your business, whether it's economic news, political news, societal news, technology news, everything you read, just ask yourself the question, what does this mean for my business? I think if you combine these three, that these are excellent tips for CEOs or managers. Специально для Kyivstar Business Digest.